again. Thanks for joining us. I'm Deborah Dominy with Juvenile Court, and we had to put our summit off again because of COVID. But I have a great committee that includes Basher and Oaklawn and DCS and juvenile detention and JDAI and our courts. And we don't want to lose touch with you. And we are going to do this virtually until we can see one another again face to face. And we hope that that's sooner, not later. As I indicated before, when I tried to start early, there are continuing education credits available for social workers and lawyers. If you don't get the information on that, contact me personally. I can help you have access to getting credit for showing up this afternoon and becoming a better person. The first speaker in what I hope to be a series of speakers until we do get back face to face is arguably as timely as it gets. Dr. Yvonne Murray-Larrier is a professor at IUSB in the School of Education. She's a licensed professional counselor, and she is an entrepreneur. Dr. Larrier is the founding president of GCSCORED and the founder of the internationally recognized Cultivating Seed System, which is a system of social emotional wellness, something we all need a little more of as the pandemic continues to ravage our lives. I am honored to introduce Dr. Larrier. Her maxim is, every piece matters. She's here today to help us with the oft-neglected self-care piece so that we can continue to care for the children in our systems. Dr. Larrier.
Thank you and welcome. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Magistrate Dominy and Carrie and all the other team members. It is a pleasure to be here today. So we're going to get right into it because we have 1 hour. So I am believing that everybody has received their journal and you were able to download it. You have your coloring pencils, you have your writing utensils, and you have your spa-like environment in the space that you're in currently. So what we're going to get started doing is, let me share my screen here for a minute. We are going to...
Looks good.
All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to rumorize. Rumorizing is in the Cultivating Seed System framework is what we call the process through which we think about what we're thinking about, what we get in touch with how we're feeling and the things that we're doing. So let's start. In the chat, I want each person to write, answer the question, what are you thinking right now? And in this framework, we define thoughts as ideas or pictures you have in your mind. Thoughts are the root of behaviors, attitudes, and emotions. So I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to write in the chat, what are you thinking about right now? What thoughts do you have? There's no right or wrong answer. It is your thoughts. And you're going to be engaging at a deeper level today. So just be as authentic as you can. Carrie, you want to read some of the thoughts?
Oh, sure. Inauguration, lunch, someone decorated their office for Valentine's Day. Lots of excitement, celebratory. We have sunshine today, so we can do that. Lots of work too, thinking about what needs to be done at work and at home.
Good. So those are some of the thoughts. Now let's go to some of your emotions. Feelings have no intellect. They are controlled by your thinking patterns. What are you feeling right now? So to give you some prompts, here is the Rheumatoid Thermometer.
Lots of feelings of some anxiety today, but also hopefulness, some frustration, a little frazzlement. People are happy to be on here and see people. So excitement, relaxed, a little fear, maybe hopeful and excited, joy, happy, little stress, relief, excitement, and curiosity, distracted, unsettled, relief, confusion as well.
It's important to know. Thank you, Carrie.
Yep.
It's important for us to know what we are thinking and to know that there's a difference between your thoughts and your emotions, and that one's thoughts are at the root of all your behaviors, your attitudes, and your emotions. When we see and experience emotions, emotions are what I call indicators. They are like a smoke alarm. They tell you that something is going on. They tell you, I am feeling this because there is something at the root of what I am feeling. So you never stop with how you feel. When you have a feeling, you always want to backtrack to what you're thinking, because your thoughts are at the root of behaviors, attitudes, and emotions. And that's why I say feelings have no intellect. Feelings are propelled or directly related to or controlled by what you're thinking. So if you want to change your feelings, so who are you? Who are you? Now that we've figured out, we've rumorized and come up with what you're thinking and what you're feeling, who are you? Here's a self-awareness quote. The hardest battle you're ever going to fight is the battle to be just you, by Leo Buscaglia. Knowing yourself, knowing self. To be able to truly care for yourself, the first thing is to know who self is. And so we're going to get into an activity shortly. I'm going to give you some keywords that I want you to think about when you are answering the question, who am I? And we're not going to just focus on the roles that you play, such as a probation officer, lawyer, social worker, but you're going to focus on your markers, okay, on your markers. But before we get there, I want to give you a definition of self-awareness. In the framework that I developed, we use this definition for self-awareness. It is the ability to accurately recognize and understand your thoughts, your interactions, mindsets and emotions, personal goals and values, among others. Honestly, evaluating and assessing your strengths, your weaknesses, mindsets, and ambitions, while you're seeing the relationship between your thoughts, feelings, and actions, and the impact that these are having on yourself and on others. Okay, so that's the definition of self-awareness. So let's now go to markers, because we talked earlier, I just told you that in order to be able to truly care for yourself, self-care, the first thing is to know who you are. So let's go to markers. What are your markers? So on a sheet of paper in your journal, I want you to take this down. What are your markers? What's your mindset? And in our framework, mindsets are either they help you grow or they are mindsets that stunt your growth. Mindsets are also, we look at mindsets as cluster of grapes. So we look at a thought as an idea or a picture as one grape, and then a cluster of grapes are mindsets, because thoughts are what makes up a mindset. And a mindset is like a worldview, an attitude, a belief about something, the lens through which you look at things. What mindset do you have right now or in general? Then activities. What are the activities or your ambitions that you're engaged in or you have? What are the dreams you have? What kinds of relationships do you have? Are they helpful? Are they supportive, or are they non-supportive? What knowledge do you have, or knowledge do you need to help you be a better you? What emotions? What are the resources that you have at your disposal? What are some skills and strategies that you bring to the table to help you to be the helper that you need to be? So I want you to take the next 10 to 12 minutes as Carrie plays some music, some mindfulness music. I want you to take the next 10 to 12 minutes. I'm going to leave this slide up. Work on answering the question, who are you, using these 7 elements? Okay, mindsets, activities, ambitions, relationships, knowledge, emotions, resources, and skills or strategies. All right, so as the music starts playing, you can begin working on this. Give me a thumbs up if you're ready. We'll keep moving.
It looked good.
All right. Does anybody want to share any of what they've written down of who they are? Any volunteers?
I believe I'm a God-fearing person who ought to do what is true, good, and noble. That's the marker, that's the basis of my character.
Okay. Thank you, Raymond.
Mm-hmm. And do I go on with my dreams, ambition, knowledge?
Yeah, share, yeah.
Okay, so dream like what you dream of having or becoming. I dream to buy my own house, have my own business. Ambition is to be a good father and be a good provider. My knowledge is more event management, basic business management, because that's my major. Although I grew up in a family of teachers, my resources, so I'll take it literally. So I have a list of resources that I can afford to help my families with. If they have problems with basic shelter, food, clothing, I have that. Anything emotional, activities, my basic activities, day to day follow up, health situations, health requirements of kids, health related in their family, I refer them to the pertinent resource. And then my mindset, we're not going to last here forever. I always remember make hay while the sun shines. Time doesn't come back. So make good use of time.
Thank you. Thank you for taking that emotional risk and sharing. All right, so let's keep going. Let's go on. Self-care is not selfish. It is an ethical imperative. So here's some self-care quotes that I like. Take rest. A field that has rested gives a bountiful crop. This is by Ovid. Another quote, as you grow older, you will discover that you have two hands, one for helping yourself and the other for helping others, Maya Angelou. And Bo Taplin says, self-love is an ocean and your heart is a vessel. Make it full, and any excess will spill over into the lives of the people you hold dear. But you must come first. And so the definition of self-care is considered, as I said, is an ethical imperative. And it generally refers to paying adequate attention to one's social emotional wellness, one's physical health, one's psychological and spiritual health. Being intentional and conscious about the 8 P's of self-care. And next Wednesday, we will talk about what those 8 P's of self-care are. So why is self-care important? One, because you are a masterpiece. That's why it's important. You are a masterpiece. You were created to do good works. Every masterpiece requires care. You think about pieces of art. They are hidden, put away behind locked doors and locked glass cabinets. They handle them with care when they are cleaning them, when they are making sure that the lighting is hitting them in the right way so that you can see the full effect of it. Those are masterpieces, and you are a masterpiece. You're not locked away behind cabinets, but you are open and available to do good works. And so with that in mind, that's why self-care is important. Truly caring for yourself requires that you first know who self is. And so that's why we did that activity earlier, recognizing your thoughts and your emotions. Those are some of the beginning steps, understanding who you are so that you can take care of this person that you say you care about. And so how you treat yourself gives other people permission to treat you likewise. But you first have to know who you are, right? It's important to know who you are. That's self-awareness piece. So let's do another self-care activity. Let's do another activity. And this is the self-care activity. If you look in your Room Time guided activity journal sample, you will see the page that is a color me, and it says, I love me. And so we're going to do 2 things with this activity. One, we're going to use it as a sentence starter. It says, I love me, and you need to complete that sentence. You can say, I love me because, or I love me when, or I love me during, or I love me at, or any other sentence completing statement. And then I want you to begin the coloring activity. So while I'm talking through the next sets of slides, I would encourage you to start coloring. And I don't have a problem with you doing multiple things at once. Some people are able to focus better while they're listening to something, while they're doing another activity. So if you're one of those people, feel free to go ahead and color. I want each of you to take 2 minutes to complete the sentence on that coloring sheet. I love me. So we will have some music playing in the moment, and then we'll give you 2 to 3 minutes. I don't think you would need more than 2 minutes to complete this sentence. I love me. So who would like to share what they wrote about loving themselves?
I'll share.
Okay.
I just wrote, I love me because I am kind, crazy, and cool. I love when I'm vulnerable and real. I love me because I am very funny. I love me because I care for people very deeply.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing, Kiana. Anybody else? I see some of my former students and some colleagues. I may have to call you guys out.
I just wrote, I love me when I talk to my family.
Okay.
Most of my family is 800 miles away.
Oh, thank you for sharing, Maureen. Anybody else?
I said, I love me when I'm happy.
I love me when I'm happy. Thank you, Tara.
Carrie, I saw you next.
Yeah, mine was I love me when I look at my children.
Is that Carrie Brown?
Hi, Dr. Larrier.
How are you?
I'm great. It's so nice to see you.
Good to see you. One more person?
We have some great examples in the chat too.
Oh, good.
I would like to say, I love myself. I love me because I know who I am and I know who I belong to.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Clara.
Thank you.
I love myself when I see that somebody needs and I can do something for someone that sometimes I never know and maybe I never going to see him or her again.
Thank you, Gladys. Yes. All right. What do we have in the chat? Read some of the things we have in the chat, Carrie.
I love when I do ceramics. I love me when I'm kind and patient with myself and others. I love me because loving myself is my foundation for a happy life. I love me because I can smile even during difficult times.
Awesome. Thank you. I know for some people, this might be a little challenging to spend an hour just focusing on themselves. But this is what is required as a masterpiece. I want you to leave here today owning the idea that you are a masterpiece and that you are worth every moment that you spend focusing on you, because without you spending the time to nourish you, again, like one of the quotes said, you're not going to be able to produce bountifully. It may be difficult, but I want you to continue in this vein even after the end of this session today. So, convergence of crises. We are in between 2020 and up to today, we are in what I call the convergence of crises. And so here's how some experts define convergence or crises, convergence of crises. They also use the term traumatic experiences. And what I say to people is, if you have lived a charmed life and you've never experienced any type of traumatic event, well, I think 2020 has changed that for you and for all of us. Because at this point, none of us have been able to escape any of the effects of COVID, the social unrest, the systemic and structural racism and the effects of that, political chaos, and on and on. And so here's how traumatic experiences are described. They come in many forms. They include acute events such as COVID, the current COVID-19 pandemic, the insurrection that we had a few Wednesdays ago, chronic experiences such as ongoing exposure to violence, historical traumas that involve the collective and cumulative trauma experienced by particular groups across generations who are still suffering its effects, such as violent colonization, assimilation policies, slavery, segregation, racism, homophobia, and discrimination and oppression. Those are some of the traumatic experiences. And so I kind of broke them down try to get them into some categories. But I would like if you could, in the chat, as I'm talking, you think of something that I did not cover here. If you would want to add, what are some of those crises that may not have been mentioned? So we have COVID-19, and some of the effects of that are death, dying, isolation, confusion, relationship issues. People are afraid. I was talking to a nurse in New York earlier this week, and she said one of the issues that they're seeing is a lot of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, especially from people who have survived COVID. They are afraid to sleep because when they go to sleep, they feel like they can't breathe, and if they sleep, they may die. And so there's a lot, she said, it is that issue, that challenge is growing. And imagine, you know what happens when you don't get sleep on a regular basis. It doesn't do anything to help your condition. So we have those issues. Then we have work, school, life balance, stress management, time management. We are going to, some of the issues that we're going to be facing. How do we get along with colleagues when we go back into offices? How are we to relate to others? How are we relating to ourselves? How are we relating to others at the water cooler? Are we still going to be able to have those conversations over the water cooler? When somebody is walking away from us, how are we to take that? Are we to take it in a way that is offensive, or are we to say, well, you know, we're still observing COVID protocols, or is this person slighting me? And so all of those kinds of situations are going to arise if they haven't already. And we are going to have to be able to manage all of these kinds of situations. So then we have economic challenges, job losses, campus work, study losses, businesses closing down, individuals losing homes, losing businesses, losing credibility in communities. All of that are part of some of the crises that we're experiencing. Then we have spiritual crossroads. Many people are questioning their spiritual beliefs. Why is this happening? Why is evil seeming to be at an all-time high? Where is God? Why am I believing what I believe? I know during the Black Lives Matter movement during the summer, a lot of people who attended mixed race churches stopped going, not only because of COVID, but because they felt that the leadership did not provide any type of support or comfort. So those are all parts and parcel of how people are experiencing the crises that are going on. Then we have education challenges. I see Carrie, I see Jan, I see Sarah Horn, some of those people who are working in schools. They all have a lot of education challenges. Logistics, the digital divide, academic, students, you know, at IUSB, we've noticed that many of the students' GPAs drop. We also noticed that some of the freshmen, and this is not only at IUSB, but in several other universities across the country, we've noticed that a lot of freshmen are taking what now is being known as a gap year, because they do not want to necessarily go back into COVID restrictions and learn in that environment. So educational challenges create convergence of crises. Then we have resource availability and accessibility. Some people have sufficient resources and others have insufficient resources. And this is not just in the US, but this is across the globe. All of these challenges and all of these crises are impacting us locally, nationally, and globally. Then we have mental health challenges, increase in depression and anxiety. Prior to 2020, the rate of anxiety and depression in children and adults, now they are saying that even children as young as 3 years old are showing up with depression and anxiety. The suicide rates are up. More people are experiencing depression and anxiety. Then we have trauma and crises, domestic violence, child abuse. We know that over 30 million people in this country are suffering from food insecurities, convergence of crises, and none of us really only have one issue to deal with. These issues or these crises are multi-layered. And so when you have one, when you see one, understand that beneath that one crisis or traumatic experience, there are multiple other consequences that may not be seen. And you, as helping professionals, it doesn't matter what setting you're in the diverse settings, you are called upon to be this helper, but you can't help because you yourself are experiencing these crises. And this is why Magistrate Dominique and her team decided that this was the topic that we needed to talk about now, because we have to find a way to help the helper to help. Let's see some of the other topics here. What are some of the topics that we saw in the chat? What are some of the other crises, Carrie? Any?
Pretty much everything that you've mentioned, agreeing on just everything being multi-layered: division, poverty, hatred and judgment of one group, masking, not to mask, lots of things we've been facing, lack of connection among families, kids in residential, reconciling faith during this time.
So what is your time? And time, as we know in the Rumor Time process or the Cultivating Seed System framework, stands for your thoughts, your interactions, your mindsets, and your emotions. And so this is the process I would like you all to leave with, knowing how to recognize your time, how to understand your time, how to manage your time, how to express your time, and how to reflect on your time. This is a systematic, streamlined way of moving from imbalance to balance and from unconscious living to conscious living. If you are able to practice this on a regular basis, this is a technique or a system that you can use to help you care for yourself. So let's go to trauma defined. So let's define trauma. Here's a quote, two quotes. Elie Wiesel says, "I swore never to be silent whenever and wherever human beings endure suffering and humiliation. We must take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented." And then we see Kelly Harrell says, "We don't heal in isolation, but in community." Trauma refers to an event, a series of events, or a set of circumstances that is experienced by an individual as physically or emotionally harmful or life-threatening, that overwhelms a person's ability to cope, and that has adverse effects on the individual's functioning and mental, physical, social, emotional, and or spiritual well-being. Secondary trauma, vicarious trauma, compassion fatigue, all point to the same thing, same experiences. The term secondary traumatic stress is the emotional distress or residue that results when an individual hears about traumatic experiences of another individual. This stress may result from hearing survivors' trauma stories, seeing high levels of distress in the midst or aftermath of traumatic event, needing to retell a survivor's story, and or seeing photos or images related to the trauma. And I was listening to the news, they had a psychologist talking about the insurrection and the mental health stress that it has added to the nation's already social, emotional, mental stress on individuals. Watching it, seeing it, listening to it has increased helpers, which is you and I. It has increased our anxiety. It has increased our sense of hopelessness, helplessness, and just the uncertainty and the powerlessness of that event. In closing, again, like I said, I want you to think about your time in light of what has happened in the last 20 days in this country. And always keep in mind that your emotions are indicators. They're not disorders. Your emotions are not disorders. They are indicators. They are smoke alarms. They are alarm systems to tell you what's happening in the thought life, in the world of your behaviors and activities and the mindset. In closing, I want to leave these quotes with you. In order to be effective, you must be reflective. And as air is to life, so are social emotional skills to relationships. They are like the air we breathe. I look forward to continuing our conversation next Wednesday, same time. And Carrie can give you any further information.
I want to say thank you, Dr. Larrier, and thanks everyone for joining us. See you next week.
Okay.
Good. Bye.